What I want to talk about is the rapidly changing ethnic makeup of the UK and how that's happening a lot faster than pretty much anyone realises. And secondly, how that effectively kills or renders irrelevant the civic nationalist individualist idea. Now, I base this on a Department for Education report from June 2019. That the figures were put together in January 2019, and it was called Schools, Pupils and Their Characteristics. Now, I didn't see this report when it came out. I only saw it in a Dominic Frisby video, but I will put the link below now. Now, what that report basically says is that the number of ethnic minority pupils in state-funded primary schools rose from 20% in 2006 to 33.5% in 2019. So if you look at that table, that graph, what you see is 2006, it was at 20%. Then it rises in a nice, steady, straight, clean line to 33.5% down in 2019. And that dark blue line, that is state-funded primary schools. That's between ages 5 and 11. Now, I'm sceptical of that data, firstly because demographics don't move in straight lines, they move in curved lines. A couple have 3 children, and those children have 3 more children, those grandchildren have 3 more children. That creates the upward curved line, not a straight line. Secondly, the numbers for Muslim children, who are one part of the ethnic minority makeup, the numbers for Muslim children were reported to have almost doubled between the census of 2001 and the census of 2011. They grew by 80% in 10 years, not the 65% growth in 13 years that is shown in this graph. Now, the other thing that I refer to is my own analysis, looking at the growth of the Muslim population since 1950. It has always grown. It has never grown by less than 6.5% per year, often more than that. And what that means is a doubling every 12 years or faster. And if you do the maths, if you double it and double it and double it, you'll find that the Muslim population are likely to become a majority in this country at that rate by about 2050, maybe slightly before 2050. So I would have thought that the entire ethnic minority population is likely to become a majority before then. And this gives the lie, it seems to me, to disprove the report that was put out by Professor David Coleman of Oxford University. I think he was brave to do it, where he said that we, the ethnic British, we're on course to become a minority in our own land by 2066. No, wrong answer. I don't believe that for a moment. I think that is rubbish. I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than that. And what that study says is that, what the Department for Education report says is that in 2035, it is not a question of tinkering with immigration. It is not a question of trying to assert national identity by getting school children to be more patriotic or having citizenship tests. It is simply then a question of handover. We become caretakers of our own country, getting ready, preparing to gift wrap it, to hand it over to ethnic minority immigrant populations who are now going to be in the majority. And they can say, I would expect them in those circumstances to say, look, our children are the majority. Give them another decade, they'll be adults. Another decade after that, we are going to be the majority. It's inevitable. The die is cast. Hand the country over now. Make sure it's orderly and clean. And we might then go easy on you if you do that. And don't think that ethnic minority populations are above talking like that. Muslim populations or Black Lives Matter populations. That 2035 deadline is not far away. It is about as far away, or it is closer to us than the 2005 tube bombings were. They were precisely 15 years ago. January 2035 is 14 and a half years away. And these numbers they call the bluff of civic nationalism. They call out civic nationalism. Now, what is it? I would define a civic nationalist as being like Brian in The Life of Brian, where he goes to his window and he sees all his hundreds of followers there, and he says to them, "Look, you are all individuals." And they chant back, "Yes, we are all individuals." That is the fantasy high point for a civic nationalist. That is what a civic nationalist craves, to be able to say, don't have any identitarian politics, don't have any collectivist ideals, act as individuals and insist purely on your individual rights. No, wrong answer. What they also tend to say is, isn't free speech a good thing? Aren't snowflakes silly? Isn't woke culture foolish? Aren't identity politics a bad thing? You must never adopt identity politics, even if your enemy is going at them hammer and tongs. And what if they're pushed? What they will eventually say is, well, okay, white British people should remain a majority in Britain, but don't worry, it'll never come to that. It's a long way off. We'll turn the ship around before then. And until then, all we need to do is tinker with immigration figures. No, that is not going to work. It is going to hit us a lot sooner than civic nationalists, individualist politicians believe. And they cannot address these issues. They cannot address that demographic minority expansion for four reasons. Minority ethnic expansion is driven by four things. The first one is new immigration, which civic nationalist, individualistic politicians say they're going to tinker with. They're going to curb the numbers. They're going to reduce it. We have heard that for more than a decade. Every couple of years, a new pledge to reduce immigration, cut it drastically. And every couple of years, we hit a new record for immigration figures. Currently, we're running, I think, fluctuating around 450,000, 500,000 mark per year coming into this country. Immigration is operating full blast. It can't operate any faster because you can't process people faster than that. Those numbers are not going to be brought down by any kind of conservative movement. Whether some civic nationalist group is going to be able to succeed, well, I don't. That's just not relevant. The reason it's not relevant is because of the other reason. The other three reasons. The second thing that is growing ethnic minority populations in this country is the importation of spouses. Now, you might say, well, we can pass a law saying you're not allowed to import spouses. Okay, what happens then? Supposing you have a Pakistani male with British citizenship. He goes to Pakistan, marries a woman, gets her pregnant, comes home again. She then visits on holiday, and lo and behold, the child is born in Britain. And he decides the child is his child. It's born in Britain. It's eligible for British citizenship. He is going, and he's going to keep the child with him. Do you kick that woman out of the country? Maybe you do. You say, yes, go back to Pakistan. What if that happens 4 times, 5 times? Can you see a civic nationalist talker, say Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, or Douglas Murray? Can you see such a person saying, no, you are not allowed to come over, you're not allowed to be with your children? No, they will say, we respect you, this is a matter of individual rights. Your individual rights mean that you can come over and you can be with your husband and children. If you put it around the other way, say that the Pakistani with British citizenship is the woman. Suppose her parents get paid a lot of money for her to go to Pakistan, marry a Pakistani male. She gets pregnant, comes back to Britain, has the child. And suppose that happens 3, 4, 5 times over. Do you really think that civic nationalist politicians or commentators are going to say that dad has no right here with the mother and those children? They're just not going to stretch to that. They will insist on individual rights. The other two things, which are really major, bigger than new immigration or the importation of spouses, are the fertility rate, the number of children that people in ethnic minority populations have, and the fact that they have those children at a significantly younger age. And there is nothing that government policy can do to affect that. Government policy, legislation can't touch that. You can't interfere. It's impossible to interfere in that. So simply referring to civil policy individual rights in order to try to curb this growth, which is going to hit us very soon, in slightly over, a little bit over a decade, that will not work. Now, and because of the data, and if you don't believe me, look at the data in that report, schools, pupils, and their characteristics. It effectively points to two options. Either we get ready to hand over our country and we say, we've lost, we're going to be the minority, we accept it, take it over. You're going to be the majority, here it is, take our country over. Or else we are going to have large scale, quite widespread, or very widespread, repatriation. And there is no third option. And the priority is then to make sure that repatriations are conducted humanely so they can be done orderly and in an effective way. And that's what people need to think through. And civic nationalist politics, the idea that blindfolded individualism will see us through, is nonsense. It's nonsense in its conception of reality anyway. People are not only individuals. People want something bigger than themselves, something more important, more pervasive than themselves that they can devote to and contribute to. A cultural tradition, a sense of home, a sense of belonging, something, a group that they belong to. People who have no sense of belonging contemplate suicide. That's a basic rule. It is a basic human need to want to belong to a wider group, a neighbourhood writ large. People want that. People are entitled to want that. We will be forced to want it by the force of events, the force of politics that we are going to see unfold. And what we need to do, and if you simply keep on the frosted glass blinkers and blinders that prevent you seeing reality clearly in favour of some artificial conception of politics and conception of life, all that will do is to make the crunch all the bloodier when it comes. What is necessary is to take off those blinkers and to square up to reality the way reality squares up to us.